This week we're going to discuss First and Second Chronicles, and really what it is a historical summary of all that has taken place. Um, and so we'll dive into it. This will be a very short lecture. I will just very much hit the highlights of First and Second Chronicles. Just talk about content briefly. A brief discussion, of course, on authorship and date and um, genre. So you've gone so far through this course. You've done a bulk of the work. And so we're easing into the midterm. Uh, so look over what you've studied so far, and we're going to push through. We've got First and Second Chronicles this week, then a discussion of Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther next week. So, First and Second Chronicles, uh, as far as the content is concerned, we have the Chronicles, which are divided into three major sections. You have the genealogies of First and Second Chronicles, found in chapter 1 through 9. Focus of this section is to show the continuity of God's grace to all of Israel from the time of Adam to the exile. So, huge genealogy found in this portion of Scripture. Then discussion of the United Kingdoms in chapter 10 of First Chronicles through chapter 9 in Second Chronicles, and that the United Kingdom under David and Solomon is generally positive and avoids negative criticism of the reign apart from David's census. So, whereas reading through First and Second Samuel, First and Second Kings, particularly First and Second Samuel, and a negative, well, not really a negative portrayal of David, uh, but the negative was left in, whereas Chronicles tends not to do that. It's generally positive, avoiding the negative. David and his situation with Bathsheba, his children, um, and all that went on with them. Solomon and his marrying of foreign women, and that ultimately leading to his downfall. These things are avoided in this section. And then you have post schism kingdom, and that is Second Chronicles 10 through 36. It's largely unconcerned with the history of the northern kingdom unless it deals with events in the south. So the focus is on the southern kingdom of Judah, because ultimately that is David's David's tribe, right? It's from the tribe of Judah. And so ultimately Messiah will come from the tribe of Judah, and we see Jesus coming from that very tribe as well. The kings are generally portrayed as good kings in the end, whereas previously you'd see them in the full light of day. Because some kings were, generally good. You have Hezekiah and all the reforms, what goes on there. But then you had bad kings like Rehoboam and all that went on with him. So um, there's that. The theological history of the Davidic king and the Jerusalem temple is found in First and Second Chronicles. Also, messianic expectations are alive. And so there is an expectance of the Messiah to come. Of course, Jewish tradition Messiah is still alive and with expectation. Christian traditions, of course, uh, Jesus is seen as Messiah. But in First and Second Chronicles, messianic expectations are alive. Then you have the formulation of ethnic and religious identity, and then the quick retribution for disobedience or obedience or disobedience to covenant. So, keeping covenant is important uh, throughout the Old Testament, and then it's highlighted here in First and Second Chronicles. As far as the authorship and date, here is some considerations. It's the last book of the Hebrew canon, and so it kind of it's it being a summary. The Hebrew canon, which canon we're talking about a united collection of scripture. So sometimes you'll hear someone say the Old Testament canon, well, they're talking about the Old Testament books, or the New Testament canon. That'd be the set of the New Testament books. So generally in a Jewish tradition, uh, First and Second Chronicles ends that the Hebrew books that they're looking at. Uh, it draws from other sacred sources. The records of is used, and so other sources are being quoted uh, in First and Second Chronicles. It begins with a genealogy from Adam and concludes the expectations of the Second Temple, which was taken up by the Ezra and Nehemiah collection. And we'll get into that next week. Then Chronicles is a theological history from the creation to the exile, and anonymous and composed sometime in the post exilic period in anticipation of the new temple. So it is thought that the author is unknown and that it was composed after they come back, after the southern kingdom comes back from Babylonian exile. So it's post exilic. And so the thought is before the temple is built, the new temple, in around 539 BC. The genre, simply, you can remember it's historical narrative. Uh, it's probably more historical narrative than any other portion of historical narrative, in that it's a huge summary of what took place from creation up until the new temple being built in a post exilic period. So if you have any questions, let me know. Again, this was a brief lecture, but that's okay. Sometimes you just want a brief lecture, right? So remember, do your readings, um, follow up with your quizzes, make sure you're on pace. And if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to me. There's my email. Thank you. Have a good day.